Business Morning, the race for the next World Bank president is still very much on, and of course the three candidates have been garnering support for themselves. Of course it's a very much coveted position. Well, that's what we're focusing on today, and I'll be joined very shortly by Professor Akpan Ekpo. He's the Director General of the West African Institute for Financial and Economic Management. But let's take a look at the three candidates. Let's take a brief look into their profiles. We'll start with Mr. Jose Antonio Ocampo. He's a former Colombian finance minister. He's also the former UN Undersecretary. He's currently a professor of professional practice at New York's Columbia University. He also has a PhD in economics from the Yale University. Next is Dr. Jim Yong Kim. He's a candidate put forward by the U.S. He's a former director of the HIV/AIDS section at the WHO, that's the World Health Organization. He co-founded the Health Charity Partners in 1987. He has a medical doctorate from Harvard, that's in 1991. He also has a PhD from the same university, Harvard, in anthropology from 1993, and he's currently the president of Dartmouth College in the United States of America. And last but not the least, Nigeria's Finance Minister, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, two-time Finance Minister, still currently Nigeria's Finance Minister and Coordinating Minister for the Economy. She is also a former diplomat. She has a PhD in Regional Economics and Development from the Harvard University. Now, very strong contenders there, three of them. One, of course, what has caught everybody's attention, the fact that candidates is being presented for the first time from the emerging economies and developing nations, as they're called. Well, joining me now is Professor Akpan Ekpo, and that's what we'll be looking at this morning. We'll also be focusing on the voting process of the World Bank. Thank you, Dr. Akpan, for being here.
Thank you.
Now, we've looked at the profile of these three candidates, no doubt, of course, very impressive resumes there. Although many people in the last I'm sure you have been observing what's been happening in the last couple of weeks. The fact that everybody seems to, or Dr. Okonjo-Iweala seems to be a favorite, perhaps because she's the first candidate, perhaps she's a woman coming from the first time from a developing nation, the region rather. What are your thoughts on this so far?
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is very much qualified. I don't think because she's a woman, because she has the credentials to be the World Bank president. I mean, she spent most of her working life in the World Bank, over 20 years. She's very much qualified in terms of the profession. But as you made the point, it's the first time that African countries and emerging nations are trying to put forward a very strong candidate. But let's also know that it's not all the emerging nations, because I don't think India actually supporting her. But the African Union definitely is behind her. I think she has all it takes, if it's based on merit, to be the next president. There's no question. In terms of academic qualification, experience, she's very much qualified. Now,
speaking about merit, for decades the World Bank has lectured its borrowers on the virtues of merit-based selection and objectivity, transparent procedures. However, when it comes to the World Bank presidency, we know that Washington has never adhered to those principles.
Well, yeah, you see, actually we have to go back to the roots. World Bank was established by these world powers, put it that way, in 1944. And so they have to protect their interests at all costs. Although traditionally, the US has held on to the president of the World Bank, while Europe has held on to that of the IMF. But historically, these countries created the bank, so they have to protect their interests. More than that, your voting power is based on your subscription to the World Bank. And you know the US has the largest subscription in terms of money into the World Bank, and so it has the largest number of votes. In fact, in all of the World Bank has about 5 agencies, all in one group. Okay, if you look at it on the average, US has about almost 24% of the total voting power, and so also in terms of subscription. And by the time you now add Germany, France, United Kingdom, and one or two others, definitely it has an advantage in terms of voting. So the point is that although they've been preaching merit, when it comes to those positions, politics okay, dominates, in my view. So if they stick to the politics as they've been doing for over 50-something years, then it will be difficult to say that the U.S. would like to give up that position. Then also, in my view, it is not correct when the U.S. says that they're no longer heading any international institution. You know, they've been saying that they're not heading the UN, they're not heading the WTO, and so on and so forth. But in practical terms, it is the U.S. that influences these organizations. You know, so even if you don't have a symbolic head, okay, they decide actually what happens in these institutions.
Now, okay, you did make a valid point there in terms of, because really we shouldn't be too sentimental about this. It is, you know, what it is. In terms of shareholding, we do know that the U.S. has the biggest shareholding, and for good reason also. Yeah. But many might argue that in terms of, because the World Bank policies is usually geared towards developing nations. We are the ones who go to borrow. Every year the World Bank gives out over $57 billion US dollars in loans to help, you know, the poorer regions.
Right.
So because most of the policies and, you know, they take are geared or affect us developing and emerging economies the most. Many might argue that that's even more reason why the developing nations should have a bigger voice or a bigger say, as it were, in the presidency, or at least in the top leadership of the bank.
Yes. Well, to some extent they're right, but the point is that you know, when they say that they give loans to poor countries, we have to be very careful. So there are 5 agencies. Okay, there are some of them that give so-called free interest loans and grants. There are others just like MEGA actually make some profit from the loans they give out. Okay, so the problem is that Ngozi and Ogambo, their inclusion, in my view, brings to bear the need to look at the governing structure of the World Bank invariably. Okay. What we've been calling voice and participation. Okay, it's not just when it's time for the presidency and then emerging nations and so on start making noise. They have to look at the structure of the bank itself. So this is important. This is a time to do that. To say, look, let's look at the entire structure of the bank. Because if, as you said, we go to borrow and we are more in number, okay, which will be part of the process that takes decision. So far, that's not the case. Okay, it's not the case. If you'd be amazed that you put together all of Africa, the voting power is not up to 20%.
I know that the voting process was reviewed in 2010. Some countries were given a bigger...
Yes, some
were reduced.
Some were
Nigeria,
reduced.
For example,
yes.
We were given a smaller chunk of the voting. So,
exactly, yes.
I mean, in terms of, you know, because everybody's trying to rally support for Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Exactly, yes.
What are our chances, or what are her chances as well?
Well, as I said earlier, if it's based on merit, she's the most qualified.
But if we don't have enough votes, if to put that forward, what does that come to at the end of the day?
No, she's been put forward.
In terms of voting, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what the problem is really. And we are hoping that the largest subscribers of the bank, okay, at least 2 or 3 may change their mind and decide to vote on merit, but it's not yet not there. That is the worry of most people, that politics will dominate. And that is why I was saying that there is need to change the entire governance structure so that those who are more in number have a voice in governing the World Bank, okay, and also participate in that process. It's the World Bank, but it's not owned by all of us.
Unfortunately. As they were. Now, the 3 candidates this week, they've faced a panel of interviewers, exactly, the general public, you know, just to sound them out, see what kind of value they will bring to the World Bank. Now, I was looking at some of the comments from the 3 candidates. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, she went first on Monday, and she said that, or rather, she focused on jobs creation, and she said not just in developing countries, but also developed countries, you know, providing employment, especially among the youth. What do you think about her own vision, focusing on jobs creation?
Well, our vision is quite in order because, see, globally, there's a problem of unemployment all over the world, especially youth unemployment. So, trying to focus on that is the right way to go, okay? But the point we have to know is that even if all the 3 candidates talk about job creation, it's wanting to put the policy in place. It's another thing for the policy to be effective. It takes time. But at least she has the right perspective to say, look, part of the world problem is unemployment, and I'll focus on that. Don't forget that the president of the World Bank precise over meetings of the board. Okay, but there are other countries, and I'm sure that by what she said, she must have won the minds of the other countries. Because all the other countries have job problems. So I was glad to hear that. As I was saying, that if it's based on merit and based on what as she appeared in the facing the public, there's no question that she should be given a very strong constitution.
Okay, now let's look at what Mr. Jose Ocampo said when he made his presentation. He said he believes the World Bank needs a change of culture. He says he would transform the bank into a client-based organization. He focused on the staff of the World Bank. He said they have this superior attitude and the fact that there needs to be a new culture. But that was what he hampered on. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so for me, that's not really a big deal because the bank will always recruit the management. A strong, qualified, robust management team. Where the senior management team of the bank actually runs the technical aspect of the bank, and they are known for not going for second rate. So it won't be it's not really a major statement in my view, because there's no way the World Bank, okay, will try to employ those who are not qualified. If he says he wants to change the
no, well, obviously, yes. They are all qualified. He was talking about that attitude and attitude change.
Yes, that is where I don't know much about the internal workings of the bank. I've only been there once as a visiting professor at the World Bank. But when they go on their missions, okay, they carry their assignments based on due process. Okay, I have thought that he would say that, look, I'm going to ensure that third world countries, Africans, okay, considered for employment in the bank. Because see, that's another issue. If you look at the employment, those working in the World Bank, the number of Africans are not that many. Because these are the people who actually do the day-to-day work, the technical work that goes to the various committees and the board.
Well, if he was going to support anybody, surely there will be Latinos somewhere, and not even Africans, as it were.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's look at Dr. Jim Yong Kim. He said he would change what he called the status quo. He said he's going to challenge existing orthodoxies. I'm not sure what he meant by that. He said he'll also bring vigor, objectivity, and a focus on data that will help the bank define and achieve its goals. And it's all political. I don't want to use the word political.
Yeah, they are statements because the World Bank is known for its neoliberal policies. So that ideology cannot really change easily. It's very, very difficult. Because as I said, whether the U.S. is the president of the bank or not, the thinking of the U.S., their perception of the world, okay, dominates the bank's thinking. The bank's, what I call neoliberal, the so-called Washington consensus. Okay? That's the bank. In fact, we've seen that economists who have gone to the bank, okay, and are much more interested in concrete development have not lasted. They've left, okay, because the bank essentially is based on neoliberal policies. So I don't see him changing that, except by miracle, the United States changes its perception of the world, and the UK and France and so on. These are the people that actually run the bank's policies. Okay, they said they intend to reduce poverty. It's over 60 years now, almost. Poverty is increasing.
But that's actually the main focus and main goal of the
yes,
bank.
of the bank.
But we do know that poverty can't exactly, disappear completely.
Yeah, you can completely eradicate it, but if you see signs that it's being reduced, you get it. Because let's put here the counter argument. If all of us are developed, would there be the World Bank?
Oh, well, that makes sense.
So it's the issue of interest. Okay. Yes, we are seeking to reduce poverty, but how far can we go? That's the point,
So what do you think the World Bank needs at this time? Because, coming from the global economy changed right from the financial crisis of 2008 when we had the Lehman Brothers fall.
Yes.
So there was a paradigm, there was a shift into, policymakers, as in terms of the whole issue of policymaking, all of that changed. Well, is this a World Bank that's still relevant in today's
The World Bank, in my view, is still more relevant than the sister organization. Because at least if you engage them, you could get constitutional loans for your country. How you use the facility is another matter. So they're still a little bit more relevant. I mean, they're still relevant, okay? As you said, for example, they have the best economies, the best you can think of. But the global crisis, which they couldn't even predict.
That's why I asked you. I think it's relevant because I want to believe they have professionals, experts, there who are monitoring economies.
It's the nature. We don't have to. It's the nature of how the economies are run. Once you are building a market economy, crisis will come and go. Sometimes you have no control. Okay, if a market type economy was to avoid crisis, then the U.S. will be the one. But we know that the United States of America experiences periodic crisis, no matter how it tries to buy the economy. It's the nature of investment. So as I said earlier, these 5 countries are the major drivers in terms of the thinking of the bank. Until they change their thinking, okay. Now what we are seeing is that because of the global crisis, we are seeing more and more of state relevance in the economy. The bank has gone through a lot of processes. At some point, the state relevance is reduced. Now, because of the global crisis, they are saying, let us look more at the state. But again, be careful so the state doesn't dominate the system. So it boils down to the fact that, as I said earlier, the third world countries must want to claim part of the ownership. Because see, when the World Bank was put together, we were all colonies. That's what people forget. At the time the World Bank and the IMF were put together, we were a colony. The British government saw us as part of its empire. And so it will take a lot of struggle. And over the years, we'll be shouting voice and participation. That's why when you mentioned that 2010, there was some
change to the voting
power.
Allocation.
It's part of the cry, part of the struggle. We need more of that. And that is why if you get somebody like Ngozi Iweala in charge, she may further drive that process.
Do you think they see that as a threat of some kind?
Oh, definitely, because she could drive that process. Those who know her, she's a no-nonsense person. Things will be done properly. And with the backing of the emerging economies that are more in number, you can now see a major change. Sometimes change will come from the top. Okay? President of the World Bank, I've seen all these problems. So all these countries, can you assist me so that we could make a change? But if you still have an American there, it's business as usual. But it doesn't mean that we still should not be struggling to change it. But it will be a long struggle. And in the long run, we're all dead.
Let's take a short break at this time. I've been talking to the Director General of the West African Institute for Financial and Economic Management, Professor Akpan Ekpo, and we have been looking at the World Bank presidency. 3 of the candidates have all faced panelists this week of interviewers, and have also faced the public, telling the public the kind of value they will bring if elected the next president of the World Bank. We'll be right back after the Welcome back to Business Morning. Now, according to analysts and observers, the next World Bank president should have experience in government, economics, and finance. Well, after all, it is a bank, but many still argue that looking at the resumes of the three candidates, or one or two of them, that they don't exactly fit the bill. But of course, that's just opinion. I still have Professor Akpan Ekpo here with me, and that's what we're still looking at. Now let's talk about Africa's interaction with the World Bank in the last couple of years. Every year we do go to the World Bank to take loans, and of course now, as a matter of fact, this year we have taken a huge amount of loan from the World Bank. In terms of Africa's interaction policies from the World Bank, how has that been in the last couple of years? Any significant impact? Is this something that we can say, yes, we have benefited significantly from the World Bank?
Let me say it depends. In terms of the amount of loans given to African countries, you say, well, it has been increasing over time. What has been the outcome of those loans is a different matter. How you manage the loans as a country is very, very important. So the bank has not done much in terms of monitoring how those loans have been utilized. And so, for example, Nigeria. I mean, years back, there's a lot of World Bank loan on water, on provision of water. But you know that up to now, we have a big challenge in that area. But you see the amount of loans that was given for water projects, you'll be amazed. So the bank is there to give loans to African countries, but how we use those monies is a different issue. But over time, we'll say that the bank, as a developmental institution, has tried to offer loans on concessionary terms. Okay, and it depends on the agency you're looking at. Where is the IBRD? The original name of the bank, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, or the IDA, International Development Association, or whatever. About 4 or 5 agencies. So over time, the loan has been increasing, but the impact has not been much. We can't say it's been satisfactory, in my opinion. If you look at the continent as a whole, although there are some countries, we take case by case, that have made some significant progress. Because even to access the loan in the World Bank is a complicated process. There are some countries will start, other countries will start and stop because they don't have the expertise. And so you end up using most of the loan from the bank to pay consultants, to help you access the loan. So it's not as easy as people think. And that's why at times in Africa we rush to the ADB, the African Development Bank.
Okay, let's look at the World Bank.
Yes.
With Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as head. Yes. What kind of World Bank would that be, coming from the kind of policies she's had in the past, her resume? Yes. I know she has been put as head of at least African region. Well, yes, she was managing director at the World Bank.
The African region, yes. As I said earlier, I've been the head. For those of us who know her, she works very hard. She's an operation person. Okay. But in terms of drastically changing the thinking of the bank, we should not expect much. You get my point? Because even if she becomes president, she has a casting vote. If there's a tie, president votes to decide. But in terms of giving African countries some hope and fighting for our own constituency, she will do that, okay? And we also give our countries in the continent the desire to push in more projects. In fact, I think the area she will do more for Africa is the area of building capacity, so that Africans can access the facilities in the bank. She should do that a lot, in my view, okay? So a World Bank driven by Ngozi Iweala, in my view, will be much more efficient, because she goes for that. You have less waste, and the perception that an African, a Nigerian is heading the World Bank, gives you encouragement to say, well, there's hope.
Do you think that perhaps the Western powers, the US, the UK, who are the majority shareholders of this bank, do you think perhaps they're concerned about the fact that an African or somebody from the developing nation will come with these policies that at the end of the day would be more favorable to? Do you think there's that fear of reorientation?
I hope they're not thinking that, because, as I said...
Well, it's a possibility.
You see, it's difficult, because I said, you are president, but those countries must vote for in major policies. Okay? So you may think that things be done this way as the president, but when it comes to the voting, the US, France, UK may overturn your...
Even on when she's when she wants to take, let's say she's president, she wants to take major policies concerning...
Major policies are not decided by
not decided by the president?
Alone, no.
So if she wants to take a policy concerning the African continent, as it were, perhaps giving
those things will have started from the lower governance structure. Like some element in the African region, we do the work, and we go up to the committee level, up to the board. You get the point. So it's a difficult process. You get to the board of directors, where they take major decisions, and then the voting comes. Certain things in the bank are straightforward. There is due process. The rules are there. Okay, but in terms of the structuring, she has. You see, a lot of things go behind the scene. Okay, if she feels very convinced about a particular policy, she may work behind the scene to convince the largest shareholders before it gets to the open meeting. If she can convince them, okay, in the side meetings or before the main meeting, fine. I think she has that power to do that because she's a very tough person. She can do that. But it depends on how major is major, you know. If it's a policy that will alter the influence of these countries, it will be a struggle. So the point I'm making is that just because we have an Ngozi Iweala at the top, okay, it's still going to be a lot of hard work, a lot of struggles, with a lot of support from African countries. And I said, all African countries, each of them, I don't think there's even one that has 1% of the total vote. Nigeria, South Africa, maybe 0.8. But we need that number. African countries, emerging economies, you know, and don't forget that a lot of the major policy shifts, when they go there just to discuss it openly and rubber stamp, they take place before those meetings. You know, different committees, making them, you make sure that they don't embarrass you at the main meeting. At the main meeting. And I think she can do that. She has the capacity to do that.
In terms of perception, in some quarters, particularly here in Africa, yes, there's this perception about the World Bank that's not too bright, that many still see that as this colonial master still trying to use loans or money, as it were, to control or dominate some African nations, as it were.
As I said earlier, it was established by those powers.
Well, you have had several. You've been a visiting professor there.
Yes, I've been a visiting professor in the World Bank, and but over the years, it has grown and become different. So, how you gain from the World Bank is how you engage them as a country. Okay, if the experts come to your country on a mission, and you don't have your experts to engage them, of course, you sign any document. But if you have those to engage them, it becomes a win-win. You get the point. It becomes a win-win situation. For example, you sign a loan document, but you don't have the capacity of seeing it through, actually draw from the money. That will be your own problem. So I would not want to dwell with the fact that yes, it's used as a colonial power against. No. Africans are now members. They subscribe to the bank. They should engage the bank and benefit from the bank. Okay, they will give you the loan because it's not free. Even if it's a concessionary rate, it's not free. So how you use the loan depends on you. That's why I said the weak part of the bank, and I think if Ngozi Iweala becomes president, she'll look at this: the monitoring of how these loans are used. Okay. They have all this due process in the bank, transparency, but they don't monitor it. So you owe them, cannot pay, they give you more loan.
So that's why I asked that question in terms
yes,
of the mentality of that colonial, keeping them constantly, keeping some African countries or some countries that is dependent almost permanently.
Exactly. There's that view that the major interest is not to get you out of the debt.
But you're saying it's not true.
Track. No, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying that's part of it. But you as a country, if you have interest of your country, you can escape from that trap. It now depends on how your leadership wants to approach the World Bank. Okay? Because as I said, it's a struggle. They have their own interests, you have yours. Okay? If you don't engage them properly, they will exploit you.
Why should that be in the first place? If they were set up to help poor countries.
Set up to help poor countries,
or give out loans or eradicate poverty. Yes, it's all to a good end.
You're going to a bank to look for a loan. If you don't negotiate well, they give you.
I'm talking about the spirit of why it was created. Yes, I know. The rules are the rules, policies are policies, but in the spirit of the bank's creation in the first place.
Yes.
What does that leave? What does that leave that?
The spirit is still there, but in reality, it doesn't really work. Because see, if I tell you that it took years for the bank and the fund to even begin to talk of issues like poverty, you'll not believe it. To find their technology.
But that's actually the sole goal of the
They will say it, but in concrete terms, you don't see it happening. Over the last 10 years, there's changed. There's no question. But the only issue of political economy, what we call political economy issues, the bank had no interest in those things for years.
Okay, let's talk about sentiments driving the campaign, especially for Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Now, it's not just developing nations in terms of support, developing nations, the AU.
Yes.
We've had recently, last week, 36 or 39 former employees, directors from the World Bank supporting her. We've had support from even some top financial magazines and all of that.
Yes.
Do you think it's, in terms of the sentiment, is it being born out of the fact that for the non-Africans who are driving this, the fact that they just don't want the U.S. to be there anymore, they're tired of the U.S. being there, or they actually have faith, in the competence of finance?
I think it's both. Definitely, because Ngozi has been in the bank for years. She's gone through the entire bank hierarchy, and so she's qualified. Okay, so if a director say they want her, they know her competence because she's worked on all this. They have meetings, so they know her. Okay, but also don't forget that most of the third world countries have this fear of dominance of the U.S., the dominance of the U.S. So that is all part of it too. If U.S. can for the first time take a back seat, it will be helpful. My fear is that there's a point I put on. Remember, the U.S. is an election year.
Yes, in November we did
election year.
That.
And I may be wrong, but I don't see President Obama not fighting hard to keep that position, because if he loses it, his counter is the other party in the United States. They may not even have interest in the World Bank. Will not show interest.
But because it's funny, because he didn't put. Looking at the candidate he put forward, many were expecting a much stronger candidate.
He's very strong. I mean, in the World Bank,
he gets his strength from, at the end of the day, from the voting.
No, I would prefer an economist, but
he's an anthropologist. He's more into the medical.
From Harvard, he has made his mark in the HIV, whatever. And the U.S., when they put forward a candidate, it's not because of the qualification; it's the voting power. Years ago, they had a general that led the bank.
Well, he didn't stay very long.
He didn't stay very long, but
I remember.
But the U.S. put him forward. Is that voting power is the problem? That's what we have to fight to change. And part of it is that we need to put money, increase our subscriptions so that we can also increase our voting power.
In terms of Nigeria's support for Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, foreign missions abroad, of course, we know that the House of Lawmakers have been calling on them to step up the campaign process. How would you rate their...
I don't think they've done much. In my view, I think the president of the country has done his best to recommend her. There should have been a powerful team to go around the world. In my view.
Like a specially constituted team as well. Yes,
constituted team to... I mean, there's a presidential jet. You go to Japan. Even Japan is some of the United States. You go to Japan and make your intention known. Go to Germany, go to UK, our former colonial masters, and make your point known. If you sit down in Abuja and make it known, they don't even know what is going on. They don't. You need to go there. You get my point. They need to do that lobbying. I've not seen that, in my view. The foreign mission in Nigeria calling people to tell them to vote for Ngozi is not the point. So there's a powerful delegation to be headed by the vice president. Go around the major 5 shareholders countries, including the United States. I say things have to change now, and give the facts. You get my point. And then put Ngozi credential vis-a-vis the Kingsman on the US, and let them see for themselves. Then, what the pressure comes on the Americans themselves, you get the point. Because US citizens are very, they're very pushful. They say, look, this is very clear. You don't have to insist on these are candidates. This one is better. We've not done that, in my view. We should have done that. A powerful team, well-known Nigerian professionals who are qualified, headed by the vice president, and go around the world and say, look, it's time. Because locally for us, the entire AU, supports Ngozi.
Well, that's not enough.
It's not enough.
As it's really not enough. Well, from your interactions with the World Bank, I'm sure you still know them, at least to some considerable.
Yes.
How do you see this all playing out? We know there's this new campaign for meritocracy, as it were, this time around. It's not about who has a larger shoulder, but who is the most competent, as it were.
Yeah.
What are you hopeful? What are your...
Well, I wish the Nigerian candidate the very best. But what I like is that, based on what we've seen now, there will be a committed effort to change the governance structure in the bank. This is the first time we're having this challenge. Okay, so if nothing else, okay, if a candidate wins, fine, and I wish her the very best. But at least what we're observing now will allow African countries and other emerging countries to now say, look, there's need for us to change how this bank is governed, because we have the strength, we have the numbers.
Has the bank demonstrated in any way, in policy statements recently, that it is willing for change?
Well,
let's not forget that she's a woman.
Yes.
People haven't been hampering about that, but that might also be an issue.
Yes, 2010, 2009, there were some changes where they gave Africa, I think, 2 more slots at the top level. And then, being the whole gender issue, could be a plus for her, there's no question. But I don't want to stress that because she's qualified.
Yes,
okay, she's qualified, but it could be a plus, and
the fact that she's a Nigerian, we don't have in terms of our image out there. Well, thank God.
That's another thing. See, I've been there will help our image. There's no question somehow, because when she was the finance minister the first time, it helped because she used her connections, global connections, to drive Nigeria's agenda in several fronts. So, of course, although she's president of the World Bank, no question in her heart, she's a Nigerian. so that may give us some plus in terms of our image.
Some image looking for.
Exactly.
Okay, well, it's still something we're tracking here, but we have to leave it here at this time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your contribution. We appreciate it. I have been talking to Professor Akpan Ekpo. He's the Director General of the West African Institute for Financial and Economic Management, and we have been looking at the race for the World Bank president. In less than 3 weeks from now, the board should announce a new president that will succeed the current president, Mr. Robert Zolik, who will retire in the month of June. We'll be right back after this time out. Please stay with us.
Said magna cum laude from Harvard.
Just about 10 minutes to the hour of 11. Let's quickly check with the financial market indicators for yesterday. That's talking about the money market. Rates were marginally or broadly lower yesterday, although core money, that's the short-term lending, closed flat yesterday at 13.4%. And for the secured open buyback rates for the discount houses, rates are still trending at around 12.8% on average. And at the interbank foreign exchange market, the Naira got a firm boost yesterday at both the official and interbank market. It closed yesterday at 157 Naira 40 kobo to the US dollar. Now, the central bank sold about 150 million US dollars. Traders said they expect the naira to hold steady for the rest of the week. We did get some dollar inflow from some local energy firms, notably that would be Chevron. Chevron provided some dollars to the market. So the naira is still very much stable and has been relatively stable in the last couple of weeks. That's about all we can take on today's edition of Business Morning. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Channel's news track is at the top of the hour. I'm Esther Ogbodaga. Bye for now.